intro all by myself because I haven't been here and they've been carrying the load. So here we go.
It's called responsibility.
Taking my job.
Accountability. We talk about that.
Yes. And I've missed you guys. I've been really sick. My guys, I've really missed y'all, and I'm glad to be back and glad to be feeling better. So, but it's only fair. They've done a lot for me while I was gone, so here we go. Chapter 8, The Greek World, Lesson 3, Alexander's Empire. That's what we're going to be talking about, and all that he does and all that he conquers and where he goes. And it really matters because we can learn from Alexander about strong leaders can bring change to our society. Philip II, his dad, and Alexander the Great, as strong leaders, they're going to spread the Greek ideas to everyone that they conquer. And that's such an important idea because the Greeks influenced the Romans, and the Romans influenced the Western Empire, which is going to be Western Europe, and all that goes on north of Spain and France and all into England, which eventually is also us. We are part of the Western Empire, or Western world, Western civilization, and we owe a lot of things about what we are and what we believe and what we practice in terms of government and our architecture to the Greeks. So it matters. Strong leadership can bring about society changes that can last forever, millennia. So see you later. Let's get started.
Philip II of Macedonia. While the Greek city-states were fighting in the Peloponnesian War, an enemy from the north was watching and growing stronger. This was the kingdom of Macedonia, where Philip II inherited the throne. This means it was a monarchy. Remember this from last unit, a monarchy. Philip took everything he learned from watching the previous wars to make his forces invincible. He used the Greek formations and the Persian strategies. Now I want you to write this in on your packet. You can pause it, rewind it, but get this written in. Philip's main goal was to defeat the Persians. He failed to accomplish this goal, but paved the way for his son, Alexander, to expand the empire. Again, rewind it if you need, replay it onto what you need to put in your packet. As a young man, my country, Macedonia, was mostly made of farmers. I lived in Greece and came to admire Greek military skill. I became king of Macedonia in 359 BC. Right here is Macedonia on your map, just so you can see it's right above the Greek city-states. As a king, I trained a huge army using Greek tactics. Greeks became divided after the Peloponnesian War. I took Greek city-states one by one and conquered most of Greece by 338 BC. That's all for me, folks. Bye.
Although Philip was a brilliant military commander, we're going to see that his son, Alexander, is even more brilliant and accomplishes even more. There's a story about Alexander from when he was a young boy that really kind of illustrates the kind of person he was. There was a horse that his father had brought in and that nobody could tame and that nobody could break. And Alexander, at the age of 12 or 13, when he was very young, he was the only one who was able to control this horse. So it was a sign to his father and many other people that he was special and unique and that he had talents and an intelligence that not many other people have. And we see his horse Bucephalus after here. And this horse is going to become very important to Alexander. It's kind of his partner in crime. He even names a city after it later. But before he can get there, he has to carry on his father's legacy. So by age 16, Alexander was already serving as a commander in the Macedonian army. Most 16-year-olds I know are like just learning to drive and aren't left alone at home very long by themselves because they can't be trusted. Alexander was already admired by the men under him for his bravery and military skill at such a young age. He was an incredibly intelligent person. He read the Greek epics as a child and came to just love Greece like his father did. So he was really impressed with Greek culture, Greek literature, the heroes. And we'll see, in fact, Ms. Hodges is going to talk about how even his father even hired a Greek tutor, Aristotle, for Alexander. And if that name sounds familiar, that's because that was one of our thinkers, our philosophers, that we talked about in section 2. Now, when Alexander was only 20, his father was murdered at his sister's wedding, no less, and Alexander becomes king. After his father's death, Alexander was ready to fulfill his father's dream, was ready to fulfill Philip's dream of invading the Persian Empire. So at age 20, he's got his own kingdom under control. He's ready to go start invading the Persians. Remember, the Greeks could barely beat Persia back. Persia is still strong in Asia and Mesopotamia, even if they weren't able to take over Greece. So this is a huge goal. The first thing Alexander did was prepare for war against the Persians by developing a strong cavalry, or groups of soldiers on horseback. Below the picture of the cavalry, you'll find a little box, and I want you to predict 3 benefits, 3 positive things or advantages that a cavalry, this horseback group, might have over foot soldiers, which is what most of the Persian soldiers were. They were just foot soldiers on foot with their weapons. Take a moment and think about and make those predictions. And we're going to be treating this just like we do a hot question. So we expect you to have this done or you will not get credit.
All right, so we want to talk now about Alexander's war with Persia and what he did there. So if you look at our map here, you can see all the area that he covered. And this is kind of an interesting story about Alexander and what he did. So he's going to start in his hometown over here in Macedonia and what he had down here around Greece and all that. And he's going to continue to, if you look across the map, he's going to march to the east toward India, headed that way. So in 334 BC, he's going to defeat the Persians in Turkey. And we've talked about this area right in here quite a bit. And so that's going to be Turkey. And then we're counting backwards, remember, so then we're looking at this timeline. We're getting closer to the year 0. In 333, he moves a little bit further east and he defeats Syria. And then 331, he moves south and he conquers all of Egypt. And he founded a city there named Alexandria. And this is where the library is going to be. That's one of the ancient wonders of the world that actually burns. And to me, it's one of the worst things that's ever happened in history because so many books were destroyed, so much knowledge was destroyed. And they were all ancient documents, and they'd all have been stored there. And that's one of the things that's really sad to me. It has really nothing to do with Alexander, but that's a really sad thing. Then late 331 BC, he's going to head back north to Mesopotamia and conquer the rest of the Persian Empire. At 327 BC, he's going to march into northern India. But when he gets here, he has some issues. The soldiers have been fighting for quite a long time, and they have been at war for a long time, and everywhere along the way, Alexander would establish cities. He would name them after himself. Ms. Todrick talked to you about that a little bit, and he brought the Greek culture with him, that Hellenistic culture that Ms. Lewis talked about, and Hellenism is just Greek ideas being spread all over. And remember, he was taught by Aristotle, so he loved all things Greek, and so that's Hellenistic for you. But the soldiers refused to march any further. They wanted to go home, and they did not want to be there anymore. And they rebelled. They said, no, we're not going any further. We're going home. And so in 323 BC, 12 years, they returned back to Babylon. Now, if you remember, Babylon's located right around here. Susa, there's Babylonia right there. And you might want to make that a little bigger if you can do that or zoom in. But in Babylon, something happened to Alexander. We're not exactly sure what. There are tales that he was wounded and it was a battle injury and he died there. There are rumors also that he was assassinated, that there was some kind of poison maybe that killed him. So we're not 100% sure exactly what happened to Alexander, but we do know that when his men rebelled and he was headed back home, that he died at the age of 32, which is such a young age to have been the conqueror of all this land. I mean, that's the whole, basically the known world of this time. And so it's one of the reasons that we talk about Alexander being great and doing such an awesome job and being the tremendous military leader that he was at such a young age. So that's another reason to add him to your list for being great. We're going to decide later if you think what he did along the way was heroic or was he a villain. So that's an assignment we have coming forward in the future. And And all along the way, let's get this last little one, he named cities after himself and his horse. There are, I don't even know, Ms. Todrick, do you have a guess as to how many cities are named Alexandria?
At least 9.
At least 9, if not more. I would think there are probably more, and at least 9 that are still here today. So if we look back and think of the ones that were back then, there's probably way more than 9. And even now, Alexandria is a popular name, and it all goes back to him. So that is Alexander the Great and his wars with Persia, guys. That's all for me.
All right, guys, so let's talk about Alexander's legacy, or what he left behind. Now, Alexander was a great general who feared nothing, and many believed that his courage stemmed from his role model, which was Achilles. And Achilles was a character in one of Homer's epics. So Alexander's armies extended Greek rule, culture, language, ideas, and architecture over all the areas that they conquered, and primarily this was in Asia and in Egypt. Now this started the beginning of the Hellenistic Age. I need you to underline Hellenistic age. Okay, this is going to be such an important term. Now Hellenistic means like the Greeks, star. Miss Tickle's making faces at me, so that's why I'm laughing. Okay, Hellenistic. Circle, circle, circle. Hellenistic means like the Greeks, okay? So, after Alexander died, Alexander's generals divided up the empire into 4 separate kingdoms. Now, in each of these, Greeks and Macedonians controlled the government. So, let's take a look. There's one here, one giant one here, and the green one down here. And I specifically am just going to tell you a little bit about this one here. So this kingdom down here in Egypt was ruled by Ptolemy, and he was responsible for creating a new dynasty that was the last line of pharaohs. And in this last line of pharaohs, we have a woman named Cleopatra. Now we'll actually talk about Cleopatra a little more when we get into Rome, but just keep that in mind. Okay, so last but not least, we have our hot question, everybody's favorite. So, why might Alexander's generals have chosen to divide his kingdom after his death? Okay, this is after Alexander dies. Why do you think these people split up the empire? What do you think? Also, what problems might arise from this decision? So, it's a 2-part question, y'all. We're going to be checking higher order thinking questions. All right, here we go.
All right, so Ms. Todrick just talked to you all about, I am recording. Mr. Green's here and he wants to know we're recording. And yes, we are. And so in 344, yeah, you make me stop.